It was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon. The kind where the sun gently warmed the sidewalks, laughter echoed from the neighborhood park, and life felt safe, predictable. But what happened that day changed everything. It revealed the kind of loyalty and love that words can never fully capture. And it came from someone who couldn't speak, but who understood everything. Every child in the neighborhood knew Max. The golden retriever with eyes like melted honey and a tail that wagged as if it were powered by joy itself. Max belonged to the Reynolds family, but everyone on Maple Street felt like he was theirs. He greeted the mailman with a happy bark, waited by the school bus stop every morning, and somehow remembered which kid liked belly rubs and which one didn't. But Max wasn't just friendly, he was devoted. Especially to little Emily Reynolds. Emily was 7 years old, with curly red hair and a laugh that could soften even the coldest day. Born with a weak heart, she was fragile. Doctors had told her parents she needed to avoid stress, strain, and overexertion. But Max, in his gentle way, became her strength. He walked slowly by her side, steadied her when she stumbled, and curled beside her feet every night, as if guarding her even in sleep. It was a Thursday when everything unraveled. Emily had begged her mom to let her walk with Max to the park just 2 blocks away. It was only for a few minutes. "I'll be careful, Mommy. Max will take care of me," she promised with a toothy smile. And her mom, heart full of cautious hope, finally said yes. That's the thing about life. It never gives warnings. Never tells you when it's about to snap. They were almost at the park when it happened. A black car screeched around the corner. Tires screamed. A man with a hoodie jumped out, shouting. People on the street froze in fear. He had a gun. He wasn't after Emily. He wasn't even looking at her. He was running from something, someone, and in that chaos, he saw her standing on the sidewalk. A child. A witness. He raised the gun. Max was already moving. No one remembered seeing him start to run. One moment he was beside Emily. The next, he had launched himself in front of her. A loud crack shattered the air. The bullet meant for a child struck Max. He hit the pavement with a yelp that split the air and hearts alike. Emily screamed, dropping to her knees beside him. The man ran off. Sirens were already approaching, someone had called. But none of that mattered in that moment. Max was bleeding. His golden fur darkened around the wound near his shoulder. Emily's small hands trembled as she touched his face. "Max, stay with me, please." By the time the ambulance came, so did animal control. One for the girl. One for the dog who saved her life. In the emergency room, Emily was checked thoroughly. She hadn't been touched. Not a scratch. But she wasn't okay. Her heart was racing. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She kept asking only one question. Where's Max? Miles away, in a veterinary trauma unit, Max lay on a steel table surrounded by machines and vet techs doing everything they could. The bullet had lodged deep but missed major arteries. He had lost a lot of blood. The prognosis was uncertain. It would be a long night. Back at the hospital, Emily refused to sleep. Her parents held her hands, whispered comfort, but she kept turning to the window, whispering into the dark. "Come back to me, Max." The next morning brought news, but not certainty. Max had survived surgery. But whether he'd walk again, whether he'd even make it through the next 48 hours, no one knew. When Emily heard, she did something her doctors advised against. She asked to see him. She pleaded with her parents. "He saved me," she said quietly. "I need to tell him he's my hero." Her mother cried silently, touched by the bond no human could break. Arrangements were made. In the quiet wing of the vet hospital, a small gurney rolled in carrying Emily, her heart monitored, her face pale but determined. And there, wrapped in soft blankets and connected to IVs, lay Max. His eyes fluttered open. The moment he saw her, his tail, though weak, gave the tiniest thump. Emily smiled through tears. "You came back to me." Her hand touched his paw. He didn't move much, but he didn't need to. The look in his eyes was enough. He remembered. He was still her protector. Still her best friend. Still her hero. And in that still moment, the room filled with something bigger than medicine, bigger than pain. Hope. Max had taken a bullet to save a child. Now the world held its breath to see if love could bring him all the way back. 2 days passed. 2 days of uncertain whispers, prayers from strangers, and blinking monitors counting down the seconds. Max lay in the sterile white room, his breathing shallow but steady. Emily visited once each day, rolled in by a nurse, her tiny hand reaching out for his paw like it was a lifeline. And in many ways it was. The bond between them hadn't dimmed, it had deepened. Every time Max heard her voice, even if his eyes stayed closed, his ears would twitch, and his tail would stir beneath the blanket. The vet, Dr. Lopez, a stern man hardened by years of painful decisions, found himself silently cheering for a dog he barely knew. "This one's got fire," he muttered under his breath during rounds. But on the third morning, that fire almost went out. Max crashed. His blood pressure dropped dangerously low. His lungs struggled to fill. Staff raced in. Emergency meds were pushed. Emily wasn't there, thank God. But her parents were, watching from behind the glass, horror etched on their faces. Dr. Lopez did everything he could. And slowly, Max stabilized. Barely. The news was delivered gently to Emily that evening. "He's still fighting, sweetheart. Just like you." She didn't cry. She just nodded and whispered, "Then I'll fight too." What happened next stunned even the hospital staff. Emily, fragile heart and all, began improving. Her vitals steadied. Her appetite returned. Nurses joked that she was stronger than most of the grown-ups in the ward. But those closest to her knew why. She had someone to be strong for. The following afternoon, with special permission and extra medical support, Emily was brought again to Max's side. Her nurse hesitated, unsure if the scene would bring more pain than peace. But the moment Emily spoke, Max stirred. "Hey, buddy," she said gently. "You're still in there, aren't you?" Max opened his eyes. Slowly, groggily. But he opened them. His nose twitched at the scent of her hand. And then, for the first time since surgery, he let out a faint whine, a sound of recognition, of connection. Emily's mother turned away, overwhelmed. Her father wiped his face. That single sound told them everything. Max was still holding on. The next few days were a careful dance between life and death. His body was battered, and infection threatened to undo everything. But Max had a stubbornness no medicine could explain. When Emily was near, his vitals improved. When she wasn't, they dipped. It wasn't coincidence. It was love. One evening, Emily brought him something, a drawing. It was messy, crayon-colored, and wrinkled from her small hands. But on it was a stick-figure girl with orange curls and a golden dog with a cape. "You're my superhero," she told him, tucking the picture beside his bed. That night, for the first time, Max tried to lift his head. It wasn't much. A wobble. A grunt. But it was a start. Dr. Lopez, once skeptical, began to believe. "He shouldn't be improving this fast," he told the team. But somehow he is. By the end of the week, Max was sitting up. Weak, wobbly, but upright. And when Emily returned, this time walking slowly on her own, no wheelchair, no wires, he barked. Just once. But it echoed like a cannon in that quiet room. The staff applauded. Tears were wiped away. Even other patients in nearby rooms peeked out to see what had caused the burst of joy. Emily knelt beside him. "You came back to me again." Max licked her hand. That night, local news picked up the story. A 7-year-old girl, saved by her dog, now healing side by side with him. The photo of Max, bandaged but bright-eyed, sitting next to Emily in her hospital gown, went viral. People across the country wrote in. Sent toys, letters, even donations to help cover Max's medical bills. Strangers called him a hero. Soldiers compared him to their K-9 units. Children wrote poems. But to Emily, Max wasn't a story. He was home. The physical healing continued, but something deeper happened too. The trauma, the fear, the sound of that gunshot. Emily began talking about it. Her therapist said it was rare for a child to process something so painful so soon. But Emily always explained it the same way. "Max got hurt for me, so I have to be brave too." The community came together like never before. A fundraiser was held at the park where it all began. Balloons shaped like paws floated above tables. Children made paw print art. And at the center of it all, under a tent decorated with photos, sat Emily and Max side by side. He was still on medication. He limped. But his tail wagged and his eyes sparkled. Reporters asked Emily if she thought Max knew what he did. She nodded. He knew. Because that's what heroes do. They protect the ones they love. At the end of the day, just as the sun dipped below the rooftops, Max did something no one expected. He stood up. Not for long. Not perfectly. But he stood. For paws wobbly and proud. The crowd went silent, then erupted in cheers. Max looked at Emily, tongue lolling, tail swishing gently. In that moment, there were no bandages. No scars. No past. Just a little girl. A brave dog. And a bond the world would never forget. But their journey wasn't over yet. Because what no one knew was that Max had one more surprise to give. 3 months later, the world had changed. Emily no longer needed daily hospital visits. Her heart, though still delicate, had grown stronger, both in body and in spirit. Her smile came quicker now. Her laughter, once cautious, filled rooms again. And Max was walking. Not perfectly, not with the bouncy energy he once had, but with dignity, purpose. Each step a reminder of what he'd given and what he'd reclaimed. That morning, Emily woke early. The air was crisp, the kind that hinted spring was near. She tugged on her coat, gently clipped Max's leash, and together they stepped outside. Down the porch stairs, across the sidewalk, toward the same little park where everything had changed. Max walked slowly beside her, his paw pads tapping softly against the pavement. His golden fur had grown back in patches. The scar on his shoulder, though faded, still told its story silently. They reached the park entrance. Emily let go of the leash. She didn't have to say anything. Max sat on the patch of grass near the bench, the exact spot he'd jumped in front of her months ago. He looked around, ears perked. Not from fear, but from memory. Emily sat beside him. "You remember, don't you?" He didn't answer with words, but she saw it in his eyes. That calm, knowing gaze. She leaned in, resting her head against his. For a while they sat in silence. And then a familiar voice called out from the distance. It was Mrs. Carter, their elderly neighbor. "Well, would you look at you too?" she said with a warm smile. "The heroes of Maple Street." Emily grinned. "We're just going for a walk." Mrs. Carter chuckled. "That may be, but you gave us all something to believe in again." Emily didn't fully understand what she meant, but she would. That evening, Emily's parents revealed something special. They had been working with the town council. And thanks to the outpouring of support from around the country, they had been granted permission to dedicate a small statue, right there in the park. Not of a politician, not of a soldier, but of a dog. Max. Emily's eyes lit up when she saw the miniature clay model. It was him, mid-leap, mouth open, eyes focused, as if frozen in that heroic moment. "They want to put it here," her dad explained, "so no one ever forgets what bravery looks like." The dedication happened a month later. Children gathered with paw-print balloons. A local school choir sang. Reporters came again. But Emily didn't notice them. She knelt beside the finished bronze statue, tracing the edges of Max's back. And beside her, the Real Max sat, head held high, eyes glimmering. The mayor gave a short speech. He spoke of courage, of sacrifice, of loyalty that transcends understanding. But it was Emily's few quiet words that stayed in everyone's heart. "Max didn't save me because someone told him to," she said softly into the microphone. "He saved me because he loved me. And sometimes love is braver than fear." The applause that followed wasn't just for her. It was for every dog who ever stood between danger and a loved one. It was for the unspoken promises of protection and the silent guardians who walk beside us on 4 legs. It was for Max. The weeks turned into months. Max grew older, slower, but his eyes never dimmed. He would always wait by the window when Emily left for school. He would always sit by her bed at night. He would always be her shadow, her protector, her friend. And Emily? She grew up knowing exactly what love looked like. It looked like fur on your clothes, like muddy paw prints by the door, like a dog who jumped in front of a bullet, and never asked for anything in return. Years later, when she spoke at her high school graduation, she didn't quote a poet. She didn't talk about grades or awards. She talked about Max. She told the crowd that the greatest lesson she ever learned came not from a book or a classroom, but from a dog who taught her what real loyalty means. Her voice cracked when she said it, but she said it anyway. You don't have to be big to be brave. You just have to love someone more than yourself. The crowd stood in ovation. Max, now old and silver-muzzled, sat proudly in the front row beside her family. That would be his last public event. He passed peacefully 2 winters later, on a quiet night, curled up beside Emily's bed. There were no sirens, no panic, only love, only peace, and a heart forever full. Emily cried. They all did, but she didn't mourn in silence. She turned that pain into purpose. She went on to become a vet, not just for the job, but for Max, to be the kind of person who saved others the way he saved her. And every time she saw a frightened dog in her clinic, she'd kneel beside them, gently stroke their fur, and whisper, "It's okay, buddy. I understand. I had a hero once too." Moral: true courage comes not from strength or size, but from love. Sometimes the quietest souls protect us the loudest. And the greatest heroes of our lives walk on four legs.